Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg. Today I'm going to do a demo on screen tone. Screen tone is a way to create gray, shades of gray in black and white art. I suppose it can also be used in color, but it's done by applying a layer of film. So it's like a clear plastic with some sort of pattern printed on it, and the backside is adhesive. This was originally popularized by a company called Zipatone. They have since gone out of business, but you see here some samples of screen tone that I have from some other companies. The first one I'll tell you about is Deleter. This is a company out of Japan. They make a lot of screen tone that is used in manga comics, and they are an active company that you can still order from. They have hundreds of different screens in various sizes, densities, patterns, gradations, all sorts of stuff. I think they're probably the premier commercial producer of screen tone in the world today, and you can order internationally and get their screens sent to you from anywhere in the world. So a couple of things to keep in mind with screen tone. There are a few numbers. If you look closely on this screen tone, it says SE31, 42.5L, 10%. The SC31, that 3 is referring to size, and the size is based on how many lines per inch are in the screen tone. What this means is if you're reproducing artwork, you're reducing it and printing it, you can create moire patterns if you have print or patterns that are too small to be reproduced crisply by your output device. If this happens, sometimes it creates a really strange, bizarre pattern that's known as a Moray Effect. Not what you're going for as an artist, not what you want to see reprinted in your finished piece. This has happened to me before. I'm sure it's happened to other artists. So the way you deal with this is there are different sizes of lines per inch or density that you would use depending on how much you're reproducing your artwork. You know, most comic book artists draw one size and then they reduce that to kind of tighten up the artwork for finished reproduction. So 31 is somewhere in the middle. The line inch varies. It's, I think, mostly between 27.5 lines per inch, which would be relatively big dots, all the way up to around 70 lines per inch, which would be a very, very fine pattern of dots. The 42.5L, I'm not sure what that refers to. It could be an angle, but I'm not positive on that. And the 10% is your actual screen tone. That's the density of the black. So approximately 10% of this screen is black, is the best way to put it. That's a very light gray. Deleter sells screens that go down to 5% and probably all the way up to, 70 or 80 or so percent, which is a very, very dark screen. And most of the 10% gradients in between there. So if you buy a starter pack, I think you get a 5%, a 10, 20 or 30, and a 50 to kind of give you a range of what you have to work with. So Deleter is, as I said, one of the more common and available screens. That's not what I'm using today. This chart pack, this is another kind of printing company. I'm not sure if Letratone or Chart Pack are still active in business today, but a lot of this stuff was done whenever graphic design was a more mechanical process as opposed to digital. So you would actually cut out pieces of this for a lot of different reasons. And you had several companies that were making this kind of material. What happens is somebody that was in printing knew I was drawing and using screen tones, so they sent me some of their old films. This one you can see is 65 lines per inch, which is a very, very fine pattern, and it's a 60% gradation. So to compare it to the 10%, you can see how much lighter 10% is compared to 60% very dark. And this is also a dot pattern. The patterns come in different forms. So this is Letratone, also known for producing fonts for the same reason, for graphic design industry in the past. This one is, This one is vertical lines. I don't know if you can pick that up on this screen or not, but as opposed to a lot of the screen tone that are dots, this is vertical lines. So what you need whenever you're going to use screen tone is obviously some screen tone. This is the one I'm going to use today, and some device to cut this out. So what you have here is a piece of paper with a clear film on top of it on that film is printed these lines. So you're going to cut out the shape that you want, you peel off the paper on the back, and you press down that clear plastic. And this is going to be the image that I am using. You need something that you're going to adhere the screen tone to. So this is the one that I am going to use today. So I've drawn this RoboCop Marvel Comics corner box art recently, and I thought it would look good with a little bit of screen tone applied to try to create more of a metallic sheen on RoboCop's helmet. So I have now moved this onto a light box, and we're going to go through this process. You basically just arrange your Zipatone where you want it, and then you're going to cut it out. The reason you use a light box is for that reason, so you can see where things line up and what it is you're cutting out. And you cut fairly lightly because you don't want to cut up your artwork underneath. Then you can take the back of your X-Acto blade and burnish your screen so that it sticks to the paper well. One thing you'll read about whenever you read comments and reviews of screen tone is different levels of adhesiveness. You can sometimes you'll see people buy clear labels and then print their own screen tone, and sometimes those things are pretty sticky. So that's something to check out. Some of this stuff will lift right off if you make a mistake, or if you want to cut out, say, a highlight or something, and I'll demonstrate how to do that now. But if you're going to try to, peel some of this off, you don't want it to be too adhesive because it'll peel up ink or it could damage your paper surface. Yeah, you can see that did some damage to the artwork, so I'll probably go back in with a pen and redraw that line. A lot of the screen tones, you can work on top of them with ink or with paint. Another thing that people will do is actually scrape on the edges to create more texture and more variation. It can be a way to sort of blend a screen tone, blend the edge into the artwork if you scrape the surface a little bit. I'm trying to think of what other parts of RoboCop should have screen tone. Maybe a little bit on his chin. I also want to keep the vertical lines running vertically or approximately vertical, just to make the piece look neater overall. And as you can imagine, you can get pretty detailed with screen tone. I did a Transformers G.I. Joe cover a couple of years ago for Tom Scioli's series, and I used a lot of screen tone in the original piece. It took me several hours to cut all the different tone for that. So, it kind of depends what you want to do. how into this you want to get. It's certainly, as you can see, a bit of a meticulous process. You can mix and match various tones to create different effects and value variations in your artwork. Whenever I use screen tone, it's mostly just as a fun drawing activity. So sometimes in commissions or covers, if I have some specific idea, I'll give it a try, but it's not a part of my regular practice. I can't imagine making pages and meticulously cutting screens for every panel, and possibly multiple screens depending on the value differences. The other thing that people do is approximate screens digitally, which is a really easy thing to do. You can create halftones basically to any size that you want. Again, output considerations may affect the sizing. And then you can just draw and basically fill in screen tones on programs like Photoshop. There are also a lot of brushes at this point that you can install at probably everything: Photoshop, Procreate, Manga Studio, whatever you're drawing in. And these brushes will approximate screen tone. So there's lots of ways to do this. What I'm demonstrating here is kind of the original, real screen tone. It's funny, we use these terms that no longer apply, like inking, whenever we're drawing, digital versions of artwork or whatever, but the original terminology stays. So screen tones, I think, have a little bit of that quality, because so much of the screen toning today is done digitally, including a lot of manga is produced with digital screen tones. It's faster, it's easier, maybe requires less assistance. I'm very stingy and try to find shapes that fit the little spaces I'm trying to fill in. Make this stuff last as long as it can. A couple of the artists that I think of who use screen tone a lot are guys like Daniel Warren Johnston and Buster Moody. I think they both use screen tone in a lot of their commissions and drawings that they post online. Another thing that you used to see in black and white comics that kind of looked like screen tone is something called duo shade. And that featured lines that would run at 45-degree angles. And the way those lines were made was by applying a chemical to this specially treated paper that revealed those lines. So you would just draw your black and white art like normal in ink, and then you would apply this chemical, and you could brush it on. You would apply this chemical and the lines would emerge, and there would be it was called duo shade because there was one set of lines that ran this way, and then another chemical would unlock lines that ran this way. So you could basically do a darker gray if you unearthed or if you revealed both sets of lines. An example of this is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, issue number 1. Sometimes whenever you work with this kind of material, like I said, people will send you stuff. So we've had people send us the duo shade paper, and then we've had other artists speak up and tell us how carcinogenic that stuff is and warn us not to use it, and especially not in a poorly vented room. So that stuff has not aged well. It's not really around too much anymore. But if you look at 80s black and white comics, sometimes you'll see examples of that style of grayscaling. Not sure what you would call that, but you know, the printed finished results resemble screen tone. Not quite the same, but... And that's basically it. That's how you apply screen tone. It can be a fun way to play with drawings, especially if you like comics history and old school production. Screen tone is definitely something that you can find examples of in older comics. Kind of fun to play around with. I don't know if it's something you would want to do all the time, but it does create a distinct look. And there you have it. RoboCop. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this little demo. You can like, follow, subscribe, leave a comment below if there are other demos you would like to see us do. Hit the little bell icon so you can be notified when we post a new video. We usually post 2 or 3 videos a week, so you won't miss anything. You can support Cartoonist Kayfabe through our merch shop at Spreadshop. There's a link below this video. And remember, read more comics.